Hey squad, welcome back to part 3 in my food independence series. Now if you haven't watched the previous videos, don't worry, you can watch them after this one. It's okay to watch them out of order. We'll go ahead and put part 1 up here and also in the end cap if you're watching on a device that shows you end cards, not end cap. It will show it there. First part was basically 7 skills or 6 skills needed for complete food independence. It talked about things like foraging and gardening, things like that. Second part, which I will also put up here and we'll throw an end card on as well, was about how to preserve your food, and I think there was like 6 or 7 different parts on that. Now a couple people commented and I thought there were some great suggestions and comments on there that I left off smoking as a way to preserve food. Hello there. And and freezing, but I'm actually going to talk about freezing in this one. So this part we're going to talk about, basically I'm going to move in a second because he's not going to let me video. This part we're going to talk about the must-know ways to store the food once you've preserved it. Stay with me now. All right, welcome back. I moved a little bit away from Heckle and Jekyll over there. Hopefully this is a little bit better. I know you can still hear them in the background, but let's get right into this. So today we're talking about the different ways that you can store your food for complete food independence once you've learned how to gather and preserve the food. Okay, so this is part 3 in the series. And by the way, if you've gotten any value out of this at any point during the video, please remember to give me a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. All right, number 1, the first way is to vacuum seal it, right? So vacuum sealing. Now, there's a couple different ways you can do this. Most popular way seems to be either in glass cans, but you can use plastic too. Sometimes that affects the taste, and you can certainly use Mylar bags. There's Wallaby, I think, is one of the companies that is very popular in the prepping community. So you can check them out. And of course, I'll link some stuff down in the description below if I can find some Amazon links for it. But basically vacuum sealing, you're taking the oxygen or most of the oxygen out of it, so that oxygen is one of the things that helps to break down food and make it spoil to the point where you can't eat it anymore. So as much oxygen as you can remove from it, the longer it's going to stay in an edible condition. All right, number 2 is just basically putting it in glass jars or Mylar bags and not vacuum sealing it, which if you know you're going to consume the food in the next year or so, it's probably fine if you've done the methods that we talked about in video number 2, where we were talking about preserving, like you've dehydrated or freeze dried or done one of those techniques. You can probably get away with, if you think you're going to eat it and you're rotating your food a lot, you can probably get away with not vacuum sealing it. Now, if you don't have a vacuum sealer right now, this might be what you do until you can afford. Oh, hi, kitty. Hang on one second. I'm just finding all kinds of like friends out here, and this cat's coming right up to me. That's great. We'll see if she wants to be in the video. Hi, honey. Hi. What you doing, baby girl? Oh, you got a little Christmas bow on? This might be what you do until you can afford. Oh, hi, kitty. What you do until you can afford. All right, sorry about that. You all know I have ADHD and that I love pets and animals. So yeah, anyways, so you can, if you know you're gonna be rotating a lot and you know you're gonna eat your food before it expires, you can probably get away with not vacuum sealing it, and certainly an option if you don't have a vacuum sealer right now. All right, number 3 is a root cellar. Now, you can design a root cellar. There's great plans for that. There's good videos on that. Or if you don't have the space for it, or like if you live in an area where the water table is really high, like I do here in coastal South Carolina, literally if I dig down enough, you can hit water. There's plans to do this where you basically are burying the steel can and then you're using some hay and some dirt to layer on top of your root vegetables. Now this works really good for certain crops like onions, potatoes, things like that, sweet potatoes. And you can also get away with this with like your winter squashes that have like a hard shell, harder skin on the outside. They should stay good for several months in root cellar conditions. So if there was a grid down scenario and you had a setup like this, you could probably store enough food from your garden to get you through to the next spring's planting time. All right, and the 4th way of storing your preserved food for a long period of time, unfortunately, is going to be dependent on having some sort of power source for many of us, right? And that, of course, is going to be freezing. You can store foods in a freezer for a very, very long time. If it's sealed correctly in your Mylar bags or even your gallon-sized Ziploc, freezer bags, things like that, you can store. In fact, this is how I store my blueberry crop every year. We harvest our blueberries, and then I store them in gallon-sized Ziploc bags, freeze them, and we just pull out what we need as we're needing it, whether we're making pies or muffins or just using them in cereal or however we snacking on them, however we use them. So you can store food for a very long time in this, but it is of course grid dependent, or not necessarily grid dependent, it's power dependent, right? Unless you live in a very cold part of the world where you might be able to get away with doing some of this stuff outside, right? For those of you who live in the really cold parts of, say, Canada and things like that, you might be able to get away with freezing some food outside if it stays frozen, if the temperature stays under 32 degrees all winter long. You might be able to do that. But what if you didn't have that? Well, there's some things you can do with a generator, and there's some freezers will actually run off of solar generators too. I've tested this with our own freezer, and it can do that. It can run off of our solar generator, and we can like cycle on and off and keep things frozen for a very long period of time, as long as I've got enough sunshine to keep recharging my solar generator. And that's quiet. That's the big difference between a solar generator and a generator, right? Like a diesel or a gas powered generator is going to generate a lot more power, but it also generates a lot more noise, right? And that may be a problem in some SHTF scenarios, right? But a solar generator is very, very stealthy. It's very quiet. And you can, as long as you've got a way to keep charging it up, if the sun's shining and, each day you can get a little bit of more power back into it, there are a lot of things that you can do with it that are very sustainable. Folks, that's going to do it for today. And remember, if you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, you can watch those. I'll link those in the end cards. Remember to check down in the description down below for some links to products and companies that I think you will enjoy, that I think makes your prepping journey a whole lot easier. If you got anything of value out of this, please consider giving me a thumbs up. It really does help me out in the algorithm. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you have any other ideas that I left out of this. I always appreciate feedback like that. And if you're brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Don't forget to share this with your friends who might need to become a little bit more prepared for the days ahead. Keep planting your seeds, keep stacking your silver. This is Prepping with Sarge.